A class action lawsuit was filed in December of 2019 against Lilith Games, the publishers of popular mobile game Rise of Kingdoms, and about a week ago the conclusion of that lawsuit became public, so today we're going to talk about it. Now, as a disclaimer, I am not affiliated with anybody mentioned in this lawsuit. I have absolutely no connection to this lawsuit. However, I have played Rise of Kingdoms consecutively for the past 1,494 days, so this video is strictly for entertainment purposes and to perhaps educate some of the Rise of Kingdoms players who watch my channel as to the result of this lawsuit, and I'll also be giving my personal opinions on everything that is discussed here. Also, I'm not a lawyer or an attorney or anything like that. I have no expertise in this field, but I'll try to link this lawsuit in the description or pinned comment below for those of you who maybe want to read it for yourself. So this lawsuit was filed in the Northern District of California, and according to the attorneys that defended Lilith Games, it was filed in December of 2019. The lawsuit involves three plaintiffs, Keith, James, and Casey, against the defendant Lilith Games. Their claim in a nutshell is the named plaintiffs say they were duped into spending thousands of dollars on in-game purchases of gems to play rigged loot boxes, card, and wheel games that had unfavorable odds for players. The lawsuit goes on to explain that Rise of Kingdoms is a mobile strategy game that's free to play but has in-game transactions, and the plaintiffs allege that Lilith tricked them into buying in-game currency, the gems, to spend on the pay-to-play games. Specifically, plaintiffs say that Lilith misrepresented the chances of receiving valuable items for games that required gems to play, secretly sponsored some players and gave them free in-game resources, and failed to enforce the terms of service, which allowed some players to share their accounts among 2 or more people and made the game more difficult and more expensive for players following the rules. So those are the three important parts of this lawsuit: misrepresenting odds of receiving in-game rewards, not disclosing the sponsorship of some players and giving them free in-game resources, and not enforcing their own terms of service, which has had a negative financial outcome for those players who are following those rules. The lawsuit goes on to say that the plaintiffs brought the claims under the California Consumer Remedies Act, and it discusses the unfair or unlawful business practices, unfair or unlawful contest or sweepstakes, false advertising law, and the breach of covenant of good faith and fair dealing. The plaintiffs say they spent approximately $8,000 to $15,000 each on purchases of bundles and gems to use in the loot box games. On some occasions, they paid to play loot box games called Card King, which was an event that looked like this, where a player would choose a particular prize, and that prize would be then shuffled into a deck of 12 different cards, and you would have to flip over matching cards in order to obtain that prize. They also said that they spent on the Garden of Infinity event, which was an event that looked like this. It was essentially a board game style like Candyland, where the players would roll the dice in the bottom right corner and move along this board game and obtain the rewards on the space that they actually land on. And finally, the Wheel of Fortune, which is an event that looks like this, and of the 3 game modes mentioned here, this is the only one that is still in the game at the time of recording this video, and this event is relatively straightforward. As you can see here, there is a wheel. You can spend some number of gems to spin this wheel, and whatever the arm lands on at the top here is the reward that you would actually obtain. Some of these rewards were very good. For example, you would get the highest reward is 8 of the legendary commander sculptures. Some of the less favorable rewards would be things like building speed ups or some common resources. The plaintiffs go on to say that they paid to play 50 or more times at a sitting in hopes of winning prizes. Although none of the games expressly disclosed the odds of winning specific prizes, plaintiffs assumed certain odds based on the use of 6-sided dice, 12-spoke wheels, and other features. Now, this is a very important part in the plaintiff's claim, because what they're saying here is that this is a 12-spoke wheel. The assumption by spinning a wheel that looks like this is that each of these segments has a 1 in 12 chance of occurring. For example, this is also a 12-spoke wheel with 12 separate colors, and the assumption is that if you spin this wheel, because each individual segment is the exact same size, the probability that we land on red red would be equal to the probability that we end on green. There's no way to arrive at any other logical conclusion without there being some sort of rules written somewhere along the sides here. In contrast to that, we have a wheel like this, which shows the jackpot as a small sliver on the right side of the wheel, which clearly has a lower probability of occurring because the other segments of this wheel are actually larger. Furthermore, the inclusion of a six-sided dice in the bottom right corner implies that the probability of landing on any one side is 1 in 6, unless there are rules stated somewhere on the screen that suggest some numbers are more likely to occur on the roll, for example weighted or loaded dice. Then there's no logical conclusion that one could come to other than it being an even chance of a 1 in 6 odds of getting any given number here. Anyway, the plaintiffs did not win rewards at what they believed to be a statistically expected rate and concluded that the games were rigged. The ostensible facts alleged in support of this allegation consist mainly of hyperlinks to Facebook and YouTube videos made by third parties to the effect that the games are fixed. By the way, I would find it hilarious if one of my videos was pulled up during this lawsuit, because I've definitely made Wheel of Fortune videos in the past. Anyway, the lawsuit goes on to say that overall the FAC, or First Amended Complaint, is long on speculation and short on plausible facts. As the complaint acknowledges, Lilith did not post odds for the ROK games and so cannot be said to have affirmatively misrepresented anything about that to plaintiffs. Essentially what Lilith is saying is that because they don't actually state the odds here, it's your fault if you assume that there is a 1 in 12 chance of landing on the most valuable prize. In other words, what they're saying is that the existence of a 12-spoke wheel does not imply that there's a 1 in 12 chance of obtaining that item, because they never said that there was a 1 in 12 chance of obtaining that item. My personal opinion is that that is bullshit, because again, without any other context, it's impossible to arrive at any other logical conclusion by looking at a wheel that has equal segments versus a wheel that does not have equal segments. These two obviously have different odds, whereas this resembles the equal odd scenario, in my opinion. Moving on, the videos referencing the complaint do not provide a plausible factual basis from which to infer rigging or cheating by Lilith. This is fair. I don't think that showing videos from YouTube is any grounds for a lawsuit. Obviously YouTubers, myself included, will edit these videos, and you know, at the beginning of the video I might show a big win because that's more entertaining, it's more exciting, and that's why people click on those videos anyway. So I actually do side with Lilith on this one. The videos are wholly speculative musings by non-parties and at several points are largely incomprehensible. Again, all of my Rise of Kingdoms Wheel of Fortune videos are me screaming and acting like an idiot, so clearly, you know, I think the inclusion of these videos is silly. Now of course they probably didn't use my videos. I would assume they used the videos of a sponsored content creator, but I have no idea. Moving on, plaintiff's suggestion that the complaint is plausible based on self-evident statistical truths is overstated. For example, plaintiffs say that the Wheel of Fortune game featured a 12-spoke wheel, which is said to have communicated that players had a 1 in 12 chance of landing on the best prize while spinning the Wheel of Fortune in Rise of Kingdoms. That I agree with. That is absolutely the logical conclusion that any regular person would come to by looking at this Wheel of Fortune without reading any other rules or terms of the actual event or game mode. The lawsuit goes on to claim, but nothing in the presentation of the wheel alone plausibly indicates that players had an equal chance of landing on a given spoke. As the allegations in the complaint currently stand, in the absence of any express statements about the odds by Lilith, it is just as plausible that the odds of hitting a given spoke were not equal. Again, I couldn't disagree more, but this is my own personal opinion. What they're saying is that because the odds are not shown here, you could also equally assume that the odds are unequal, which again, based on how the actual wheel functions, I think nobody would come to that conclusion with this wheel, for example, and these wheels in my view are equal. Now the lawsuit is claiming that because these spokes show prizes, that these wheels are not equal, but again, based on the function of a wheel, how this wheel works, it is spun and landed on at random. To me, these are the same wheel, and everybody would agree that every color here would have the equal possibility of occurring. That's my opinion. Apparently the court court disagrees with that, which I find absolutely insane. But let's move on with this. Some of the prizes on the wheel were among the most valuable and rare items available to players. So here they're referring to the legendary commander sculptures, and it is not implausible that it would be more difficult to win them on what was digitally displayed as an equally divided wheel. So what they're saying here is that this was displayed equally, but they're expecting people to come to the conclusion that it would not be an equal outcome amongst the equally divided wheel. They're basically saying, okay, well, players know that this is a more valuable item, and even though we're showing that it's equally possible to get, players should assume that it's not, which again, I mean, we're talking about the general public here. Okay, coffee cups in the United States have to have a warning that says hot on them. That's the same general public playing this game. I don't think anybody would come to that same conclusion. Anyway, plaintiff's own characterization of loot boxes as awarding rare and valuable goods on a very low percentage of occasions is consistent with the commonplace understanding that rare and valuable items are not equally available as winnings in a game. Now this is true. Basically what they're saying is that those filing the lawsuit agree that rare items occur less often, and therefore the lawsuit shows that the plaintiffs knew that they should expect fewer of the rare items on events like the Wheel of Fortune. Now I think we can exist in a reality where players know that the odds should be lower for a higher valuable item, but also expect that item in equal proportion to the things that are shown on the wheel with evenly divided segments. I mean, come on, I feel like we're being extremely intellectually dishonest here. I mean, we're basically talking about gambling in a mobile game. Like, we can't get any more dishonest than that, I guess. So I don't know. Anyway, the conclusion of this first complaint is that there's not enough information to move forward to essentially claim that the practices of the Wheel of Fortune or Garden of Infinity events are technically illegal. Also, Card King was mentioned here, but one little anecdote that I will mention is that it is telling that the Card King event and the Garden of Infinity event have been missing from Rise of Kingdoms for a very long time, and I would speculate, but I don't know for sure, that this lawsuit is probably part of the reason why we no longer see these two events. There was probably, again, this is an assumption based on no facts, but my assumption is that there was some underlying mechanic of both of these game modes that was falling into a gray area, and the mere presence of these game modes in this lawsuit probably scared Lilith enough to just simply remove them and replace them with other events. Now I will go on record and say that the difference between this event and the Garden of Infinity event to the Wheel of Fortune event is that if you click this little eye right here, which conveniently sort of blends in with the actual event itself, it does go on to display the odds. In fact, the Wheel of Fortune is in game right now, and we can see that the further rules and explanations here do show the probability of getting any one of these specific items, and the existence of this page is my assumption as to why this event is still in Rise of Kingdoms, whereas the Garden of Infinity and Card King events are not. Anyway, the lawsuit goes on to discuss the plaintiff's allegations about account sponsorship and non-enforcement of the TOS. The complaint says that one of the plaintiffs, Koi, was attacked by an account identified as user 278197949, which had a higher power level than him. Plaintiffs speculate that this was another one of the defendant's undisclosed sponsored accounts. The court acknowledges that Lilith appears to have apologized for sponsored accounts, but the complaint does not plausibly state that the plaintiffs made any decisions based on an assumption that they were not sponsored accounts or that they suffered monetary harm from the sponsored accounts. Now, just for fun, I pulled up player 278197949, who is currently in Kingdom 2717, 184 million power with over 7 billion kill points. Certainly a whale or kraken in this game, certainly an extremely powerful player, but I've never heard of this player before as a content creator for the past 4 years. Is it possible that this could be run by a Lilith employee? Sure, but I don't think that there's any basis to assume that this player isn't just another regular player. There's literally nothing here that would suggest that this is an account that is owned or run by Lilith or sponsored by Lilith or played on their behalf, for example. And so I would have to agree with the court that here there's just this player specifically, there's just no indication that this is a sponsored account, so I can understand why this complaint would be dropped from the lawsuit. There was, however, a scandal involving sponsored content creators back in April of 2019, which was before this lawsuit was actually filed, and Rise of Kingdoms has publicly discussed this scandal and has allegedly changed their business practices as a part of it. Now, many of you might know of a content creator who goes by the name of Legend Roni. Now, Legend Roni, at the time of recording this, appears to have quit making content for the game or on YouTube in general. I personally do not know Legend Roni, and from the very few interactions that I've had with him, he seems like just a genuinely nice guy. So I have nothing against Legend Roni in general. It just so happens to be that Legend Roni had been recently engaged in a big war in Kingdom 16. Roni requested extra resources and items, and we agreed to this request. So essentially, a sponsored content creator was in a war against other players who were spending money in Rise of Kingdoms, and when Legend Roni requested more items for that war, Rise of Kingdoms gave him those items. They say that they realize the severity of their actions. Our support for Legend Roni in this war has been negatively affecting the game experience for many other governors and has created an unfair and unbalanced situation in Kingdom 16. We deeply apologize for that. They also go on to say that they've decided to take the following actions in order to resolve the situation. Beginning today, we will no longer provide any in-game compensation to our community program content creators or any other YouTubers. Instead, content creators will be provided with monetary compensation for their time and effort. Legend Roni's title and leadership of Alliance will be transferred to another player. His account will then be deactivated. So I actually don't know whatever happened to this. Did he ever just create a new account? I have no idea. For transparency, here's our complete list of community program content creators: Legend Roni, Shinchi, Chiskel, Gecko Gaming, Echo Gaming, the Game Hunter, Clashing Duke, Clash Bashing, and Spooby. Please feel free to contact us, etc., etc. It's worth noting here that the only remaining content creators on this list are Shinchi and Chiskel. Anyway, moving back to the lawsuit, essentially what this is saying is that player 278197949, which we just showed on the screen before, was one of those players, and there is no evidence to suggest that, and therefore there's not enough evidence to back up this particular claim. The final part of the lawsuit is the terms of service, as incorporated in the complaint, state that players agree to not engage in account sharing, but also state that Lilith may suspend accounts in its own discretion, and it is not plausible to assume that Lilith could police every instance of account sharing, and there is no factual allegation in the complaint to that effect. It have failed to do so as a matter of course. So essentially what this is saying is that Lilith reserves the right to take action against account sharing, but it does not say that it will take action against every instance of account sharing, and therefore there's not enough evidence here to support this claim as damaging to the plaintiffs. So the conclusion of this lawsuit is that Lilith Games defeats class action lawsuit over loot boxes in Rise of Kingdoms. This article was provided by Cronenberg Rosenfield LLP, which were those representing Lilith Games, and this article came out November 30th, so just a little over a week ago at the time of recording this. And what they say is that fortunately the case was dismissed at an early stage when the judge granted Lilith's motion to dismiss on August 29th 2022. So this lawsuit was dismissed back in August, and we're just now hearing about it. The dismissal was not appealed. The judge's order is available here, and this is where I actually found the document that we've been going over in this video, so this is public information. And here is a quote from the actual law firm that was defending Lilith. The judge made the right call here, says Kate Hollis, an attorney who practices in video game and esports law and was part of Lilith's defense team in the case. While there are plenty of bad actors in the mobile gaming space and we support efforts to hold these companies accountable, the instant case here was only one of buyer's remorse. I like Rise of Kingdoms. I've been playing the game, as you saw, for about 1,500 days. I make content for this game. I've made hundreds of videos for the past 2 years covering this game, and in general I do love the game, but I'm constantly critical of the what I feel to be deceptive monetary strategies implemented by Lilith in this game. And the fact that we have a legal expert here saying that this was only one of buyer's remorse, I mean, listen, could buyer's remorse have been a part of this? Absolutely. There is always buyer's remorse at play in mobile games like this that are pay to win, especially when you're talking about between $8,000 and $15,000. It's not unreasonable to assume that there would be some amount of buyer's remorse here. I totally understand that, but you cannot look at a wheel like this and a wheel like this and say that they wouldn't logically share the same outcomes. That is mental gymnastics at its finest. Clearly the way that a wheel functions for this wheel would be the same as this wheel, regardless of what prizes are shown there. It's 12 equal segments. That is, again, my opinion, but the only logical conclusion you can come to. Now, what I find actually interesting here, Cronenberg Rosenfield, relentless advocates for a digital world. Relentless. The law surrounding digital media and technology is swiftly evolving. You deserve an advocate and guide who will fight on your behalf. So here we have a law firm that is claiming to advocate for those who are using digital media and technology and is hereby in fact being hired as the defense attorneys for those same players in the digital and technology space. Talk about having your cake and eating it too. That's like opening a law firm and saying we're going to advocate for the rights for individuals to know what healthy ingredients are in their food, and then turn around and defend McDonald's in a class action lawsuit. Now I'm sorry, but you really do take a huge credibility hit when you pull that sort of reversal play there. It's like wanting to advocate for fair gambling laws and then turning around and defending a casino in Las Vegas. Like, come on guys, you can't use this as your ad campaign anymore. I don't care what the conclusions of this lawsuit were. Now I will say again, this was dismissed in the court, so the ultimate conclusion is that Lilith did not break any laws, but we do see some of these you know, some of these events just casually disappearing. Okay, that's a little bit sketchy, I'm not gonna lie, but technically everything was legal and above the board here. Okay, I guess, I don't know. One thing we can learn from this though is that you should always be aware of what monetary strategies the games you're playing are using, and always look for the fine print. If you can't find fine print and something appears too good to be true, you're probably gonna get scammed, and the game you're playing is probably pay to win. Okay, anyway guys, if you enjoyed the video, drop a thumbs up on it. It really helps out the channel a ton. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and consider clicking the bell to be notified the next time that I upload a Rise of Kingdoms video or a mobile gaming news video. Comment down below your thoughts on this lawsuit. I would love to hear from you guys down below. Do you think that this lawsuit was bogus and just some buyer's remorse from the plaintiffs, or do you think that Lilith has some borderline illegal monetization strategies implemented into their mobile games? With that being said, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I will talk to you guys again soon. Peace.